Okay, good afternoon. I am Dr. Shantanu Mukherjee, uh, ex-Madhav batch of 1987, and we have a very, very exalted company on stage in the world of healthcare. And I'll start off straight away. We'll be having a kind of a little bit of a presentation followed by an interactive session. And as most doctors, we are fond of standing all our lives. Whether it was in medical school, at the bedside clinic, or watching the patient, we are standing. So we all like to stand and speak. Okay, a brief introduction of the panelists. We have Dr. Sushil Shah, Jivaji 1964. Then we have Dr. Amrinder Singh Puri, Madhav batch of 1979.
Thank you. Thank you.
Then Dr. Sanjay Kolte, Madhav 1983. Though he left school for academic pastures, thinking Sindhya wasn't academic enough. But all the same, he's batch of 1983. Then we have Dr. Seema Puri, thanks to Mr. Pavan Bansal. She's a renowned nutritionist. And Manish Baijal, Madhav batch of 1985, 2 years my senior, and a very handsome man, and he's a very accomplished laparoscopic surgeon today. And lastly, I'm Madhav, 87, I said. I'm an ophthalmic and refractive surgeon. So I'll wind up the show. Okay. Dr. Sushil Shah needs no introduction. He's the chairman, founder of Metropolis Laboratory Diagnostics Healthcare. Started off in 1980, sir?
81.
81. And as it stands today, it's listed. It's a multinational company, and it's renowned in most parts of India and even in the subcontinent. He is going to speak to us on a topic which is slightly touchy amongst the medical men, because all our lives we've been studying and studying and studying, lived in our silos, and as we specialize and super specialize, we keep getting into further, more compartmentalized zones. Getting into entrepreneurship for a doctor is extremely challenging, but he's broken the barriers, and how? And sir, please throw some light and let us know, and so we can pursue your path. Thank you. Please come.
Jai. Good afternoon, everyone. I think after the heavy dose of spiritualism we had a little earlier, and all the problems that Bollywood is facing, I think I'm going to talk about how to make money. Because I think that's the only thing which can keep everybody engaged now. Before I start on this, I just wanted to make a small mention of an episode which concerns Sindhya School. I actually, incidentally, last year or two, I got quite a few awards. I got 2 Entrepreneur of the Year awards. I got Lifetime Achievement awards. I got some government awards from Karnataka and Maharashtra and Center, and many others I got. So one journalist who was interviewing me for the newspaper, she asked me that which award which is dearest to your heart. So I said 2. I said one was Entrepreneur of the Year award from ENY, which is the highest industry award, which has been given to Ratan Tata and Kumar Mangalam Birla, and almost every top guy has got it. They give once a year. And I said the second one is Madhav Award. So she asked, what is Madhav Award? I said, well, that's the award which is given by our school, Sindhya School, and that's the award I got in 2017. So she said, but you got so many other awards, Lifetime Achievement Award, this, why are you naming a school award into that? So I said, for the simple reason, for you to understand why I'm naming, you have to be a Sindhyan. If you are a Sindhian, you will understand, otherwise you will not understand. Okay, coming to the main topic, that's entrepreneurship and the medicine. Actually, when I started my practice in 1981, the word entrepreneurship did not exist. In fact, anybody who showed a little bit of inclination for entrepreneurship, doctors used to call him a businessman. That was the word which was given for that. And I remember before the year I started in 81, in 80, I went and talked to a top pathologist in Bombay. I'm a pathologist, by the way. Before I started the lab. So I went and talked to him. I said, sir, next year I plan to start my lab. So what is your advice? How can I make a success? So he said, well, what's your aim? I said, well, my aim is, that time the biggest lab in Bombay used to be one Dr. Amin's lab. They were very big. So I said, well, my aim is to be Dr. Amin's lab in 10 years. So he laughed. He laughed on my face. He said, okay, then what else? I said, in other words, I'm saying I want to make a success out of this. So he said, good. So you want, what is your proposal? How are you going to do it in 10 years? What is your proposal? Which way you want to do? He said, are you going to be getting into giving economic incentives and all? I said, no, absolutely not. He said, then what are you going to do? Are you good at networking with the doctors and all? I said, not really. I'm not good at it at all. He said, then you must be good at making friends. You have to make at least some top people as your friends. Then only you can make a success out of this. He said, I'm not too good at that either. He said, when they go, in the next 5 years, I think I'm going to find you selling chana at Chopati Beach. That encouraging he was. So actually, for me, the entrepreneurship started since then. So I said, okay, now I'm not able to take any conventional ways of doing it well. Then I have to think of something unconventional. And I have to find a way in which I can still make a success without doing anything which is conventional. So I thought about it. Now that was just the time I had returned from, before that from US, I had done a research fellowship in endocrine pathology. And that time endocrine pathology was done by one very new technique called radioimmunassay, which was done with the radioisotopes. I just done that a few years back, 2 years before. So I thought that I will start a lab doing exclusively this. But there was a minus side to that. The number of tests which that did that time were only 6. Only 6 tests were available in that technology. Second thing, those tests, when I went and spoke to some of the doctors and I found out, even the top doctors of Bombay, top cardiologists, top gynecologists, they used to have 1 patient a month for those tests. So I said, how am I going to manage in such a small thing? It's going to be impossible. I mean, I'll have to close down within a year or 2 years' time. I can't survive with this. So then I thought of an idea. I said, okay, let me do one thing. I called up a lot of pathologists in Bombay. I called them up. I said, okay, I'm starting this lab, but I'm not going to be a competitor. I'm going to be a coordinator. I'm going to do things which you're not doing. So, and if you start collecting samples for me at your place, 2-3 things, your patients have a convenience. Suppose one laboratory was in Borivali, which is far off in Bombay. I said, patient doesn't have to come to me. You can collect. You'll also make some amount of little bit of money. But more important than that, your whole test menu goes up. In your lab, the level will go up. You're offering specialized tests which nobody was offering. And this idea clicked. So within a year's time, I got about 1,000 laboratories in Bombay who started sending the samples to me. But even that amounted to nothing, because even with those, the number of samples I used to get was hardly 5 to 10 a day. And you can't run a lab with 5 to 10 samples a day. So I said, because these were very rare tests. So then I started the next thing. I started taking lectures all across the country, and I used to go to every city, and I used to teach the clinicians how these tests can be useful in the clinical practice and how they will actually help him in his clinical practice. And after I finished that in the morning, in the night, I used to invite all the pathologists of the city, and I used to tell them the same thing. I said, today, you people are not offering these tests. I am offering them. You send to me, you are expanding your own test menu. Your patient, suppose I was in Raipur, I said, your patient from Raipur doesn't have to come to Bombay or Delhi. They get a possibility, and your patient remains with you. So that the like. So in 2 years' time, I had 2,500 laboratories which acted as my centers across the country. So that was the beginning. And with that, it gradually followed up. And after that, I didn't have to look back as far as that part was concerned. Then the second thing which was there, at that time, I somehow got a reputation in Bombay that I am a good manager with the labs. I can manage the labs well. So I started getting a lot of invitations from some bigger hospitals where the laboratories were not doing well, that you come and join us as the head of the department and run the lab for us. Whole lot of people advised me against that. He said, instead you concentrate on your lab, you'll do much better. Don't take up. I thought about it, and in spite of all that good advice, I took up. So it was the time when I was managing 3 hospitals in Bombay. One was Bridge Candy, which is a big hospital in Bombay. Second was Harkishan Das, which now is Reliance, which is also another big hospital. And third was Saifi. So I was the head of the department for 3 hospital labs and my own laboratory, which was growing at a reasonable pace. So after that, when I started, what I did, this was, according to everyone, it was a minus step. So I said, let me convert this minus step into positive step. So what I did, I actually started meeting all the hospital doctors more often. And I told them, I got also a lab, whichever are your patients which are from outside the hospital, if you all can, you please refer there. And I got from these 2 hospitals, I got about 600 or 700 new doctors who started sending samples to my laboratory. So actually what I was spending more time in the hospitals, against that I got these returns and it started doing well. So then of course Bombay I didn't have to look back. Then another opportunity came, and that was the opportunity where I once met Dr. Anji Reddy, who was the chairman and founder of Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, a very big pharma company in India. I think that time it was number 3. I don't know what the situation is today. And he invited me to be on the board of directors of the company, which I gladly accepted. I said, okay, this is fine. The board of directors, you have to go for a meeting once in 3 months. So that was okay. Plus, I thought it was a big honor in such a big company I was on the board. Because usually, if you see most of the pharma companies, they don't take any doctors as directors. Even till today, I don't think there are any doctors who are on the pharma company boards, big companies. So I thought that's a plus point and I took up. But then within 6 months' time, he asked me that I wanted to become an executive director of 2 companies in Dr. Reddy's. One company called Dr. Reddy's Diagnostics, another company was called Standard Finance Equity Fund, which was a finance company. It was a publicly listed company. It was not a private, it was publicly listed. So I became a director in both those companies. I executive director. First I told him no, but he said, you don't worry, you have to do it for me and all. I joined that. Which again, everybody told me that was the most stupid decision in the world, because with that, I had to spend 15 days in Hyderabad, 15 days in Bombay, and when I was in Bombay for 15 days, during those 15 days, I had to take care of 4 major hospitals, 3 hospital labs and my own. So I was always running backwards. When I went to Hyderabad, I was solving the problems which were piled up in 15 days. When I came back to Bombay, I was solving the problems here. So I said, okay, now since I'm doing this, let me convert that into this. Because my other vision was, I always wanted my lab to be pan-India. Because those days, there were no laboratories which were pan-India. Every laboratory used to be a standalone laboratory in the country, in the city. In fact, it was so regressive that they never used to have even a collection center. So suppose somebody wanted to go to a particular lab and the laboratory was at VT, a patient from Borivali wanted to go here to travel all the way from Borivali to there to get the test done. So it was my dream. I said, let me start a lab chain which is pan-India. But I said, I can't do this with all these things on my head. So in 94 or 95, I decided I leave everything and I start at pan-India. Now that was easier said than done, because by that time I was in my 40s and I was doing very well. All my places, luckily, whichever I took were doing quite well. Monetarily, it was very beneficial. Position of prestige wise, it was very beneficial, and I was very comfortable zone. So at that age, and of course I had a family, I had 2 children, and I said now to give up all this and to start all over again, I didn't know whether it was the right decision. But I jumped into it, I took the decision. I said, okay, I'm going to start with this. So in 94, 95, I resigned from everything, all the 3 hospitals, by Dr. Reddy's lab, everything I resigned, and I concentrated on that. But after that also, I kept making mistakes, because when I started my first lab in Jaipur, then in Chennai, and then in Hyderabad. But a mistake I made was that I started this lab with the local partner. And why I started with local partner? Because I said, in these places, nobody knows me. Nobody knows my metropolis also. So I said, a local partner will help me, which was actually a wrong decision altogether, because local partner had his own agenda, and all the 3 labs in 2 years' time I had to close down. So all the effort which I made, all the things which I did, everything went to dogs. Then I said, okay, let me hire a CEO who will go and start. I hired a CEO. Unfortunately, it was the wrong choice, or I didn't know how to get work out of him. In 6 months, I lost 60 lakhs in 2000, which I'm sure will be something like 20, 25, 30 crores. In 6 months, I lost, and then I had to sack the CEO. Then again, I had to get up and start the 3rd time. I said, now let me do the other way around. This time, let me do it on my own. So I made a team, and with the team I started, and that took off. And that took off in such a way from that time onwards that this was 2000, was the first lab I started, 2001. Today in 2023, today we have 4,000 patient centers. We have over 200 full-fledged laboratories, and we are in 13 countries across the world, besides India all over the world. So it was a struggle, but the point is that it paid off in many ways. Then my 3rd aim was, again, I had planned this before. I said, okay, I want to be, that time there was no laboratory which was international. Even in American labs, they used to be only present in America. They were nowhere outside. So I said, I want to be the first one to have an international lab. And I gave myself a time, by 2010, I must be present internationally. So we started our first international lab in 2004, and then we progressed. And today we have got 13 countries we are present, and they are doing reasonably well, touch wood. So I think what I want to say that, Dr. Reddy's stint also helped me, because being in the company, it taught me how to do admin, how to do sales, how to do marketing, because I was a chief of the companies. I had to learn all these things, which became very handy for me when I started my own chain all across. We could grow much faster, because though I started lab in 81, this growth period having multiple chain actually only started in 2001. So today the 2,200 labs we have, 4,000 centers we have, is only in 20 years of time, 2000 to 2020, that we started the whole thing. So the point which I wanted to make, now usually what happens with doctors, of course I think all of you are not doctors, but I think with doctors what happens, doctors, they work hard all their life, they start their practice, it takes them another 20 years to establish the practice. By the time they establish the practice, they are 35, 40-year-old. 40s and 50s is the peak period for them when they are established. And after that, the downfall comes. By the time they're 60, they lose some amount of zeal. There are new people who come in, they get into it. So your part when you have built up the brand equity is only 40 to 50, 20 years of time. And then what happens is it starts dying down. And by the time you are 65, 70, either you have no energy left or there is no work left. So when the doctors die, the only thing they're left with is the clinic, where they actually started a lab or they started their practice. They are not left, so luckily they got a son, they pass it on to the son. If they don't have a son, they just sell off it as a property. And so those 20, 25, 30 years that they spent in building up a brand equity is all down the drain to zero. And I felt that this is something we should not, because all the doctors who have developed themselves, they developed a name, they all put in a lot of effort in doing that, and I think that effort should continue after they are gone. So that's why I think when you, and actually what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship, I looked up for the decision, I didn't know what the word entrepreneurship was. It's only lately I hear. Actually what they say it is, entrepreneurship is when you put your own resources, your own effort to grow your career, and in doing so you are also taking a lot of risks. Maybe calculated risk, maybe you are taking risk. That is what is the definition of entrepreneurship. And I think now, of course, the scenario has changed. What it was in 85, it's totally different from now. Now you have a lot of medical entrepreneurs. You have Dr. Pratap Reddy of Apollo. You have Naresh Trian for Medanta. We have Care Hospital in Hyderabad, which has also changed everywhere. In diagnostic, Dr. Lal in Delhi is there. We are Metropolis, we are there. And many are there. I can give you at least 5, 10 more examples. So scenario has changed. But where this helps is that after you are gone, you have continued with the legacy. Earlier, the doctor went, as long as he was there, it was fine. The moment he was gone, he's gone and finished. in terms of money as well as in terms of name, and all that he passed on is completely forgotten. So I thought this entrepreneurship in medicine is extremely important, and this is something which can help the doctor also in terms of his and his family's future over and above everything. And it gives you a satisfaction of having created something. It's like, suppose there's an industrialist. What he does, he actually sets up a factory, he sets up the marketing, but he leaves behind a legacy of creating something, which unfortunately did not exist with doctors. And I think with this coming last 20 years, this is what has developed in medicine, and I think it has helped and is going to grow further and further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, the next in line is an iconic figure, Dr. Amrendra Singh Puri, ex-school captain, Madhav's gastroenterologist. It's whatever I say is not going to be enough to describe this person. Amrinder sir.
Thank you, Shantanu. And after listening to him, I thought I must have something to tell you. I don't have anything that I can tell about myself. So let me give you some tips of knowledge which you may not know. So that's where we start. So I'm going to be touching on two things. My talk is it's a public lecture on the liver, and basically what are the kinds of diseases that are now almost reaching epidemic proportions. So I think let's go.
It's okay.
Oh, that's a two-seater. I was wondering.
This is
Should I move this? It's okay, no? Should I move?
I'm going to start with a very iconic figure. This is the person who most of you would recognize. He was my housemaster. And today I have no qualms in saying that if I'm anything today, it's because of this man. I owe him everything. So coming to the liver.
Thanks.
People think women are best at multitasking. You know, a lady can do so many things on the go. She can look after the children, look after the kitchen, look after her work, look after her husband, her in-laws, her parental house. I mean, they are the epitome of multitasking. Men, you know, they have kind of tubular vision. They can't do it. So no. So the liver is one such organ. It's a multitasking organ. When you, Colte is sitting there. I don't want to offend him. He was my junior, so it's okay. When you look at the heart, what does the heart do? It's just a pump, you know. We had one guy called Tulu Pump. He used to just run, keep on running. So the heart is just a pump from the day you're born to the day you die. It just does one thing, monotonous, just goes on. The kidney, all it does is just filter, you know, just filter everything and take back what is important and let the rest pass into urine. So now in the liver, just look at the liver. It's just a glimpse of the liver. The liver is a factory. Let's look at it. We were talking about industry, so liver is a factory. And yes. What does a factory produce? It produces, the main thing is proteins, and one of the most important protein is albumin. Now albumin is a protein which has oncotic pressure. So everything remains in your blood because of the albumin. If the albumin is not there, it leaks out and you will get a pot belly. There will be fluid in your belly. There will be fluid in your feet, what we in medical parlance is referred to as pedal edema. And then it makes clotting factors, you know, things that can, so when you shave, the reason why that thing stops is because the clotting factors, most of them are made in the liver. So that's one of the main functions. And I'll show you some slides on what happens when the liver fails. Then it makes bile. Everybody knows that, because if I ask, even school children, what is the function of the liver? It's a digestion. So ये सबको मालूम है कि bile is required in digestion and that. And then it also makes lipids. We need lipids. Even in the winters, you need that, that amount of insulation material, so you don't kind of get frostbite, or so you do need. The trouble is, it is a factory which makes lipids. For example, Amul makes butter, but it's supposed to be moved out. The problem is that if you had, the liver is not a storehouse for lipids. It's a factory. You make something and send it. So we'll come to that. The liver is also a sewage plant. You can see some heads going, how is it? Because when we eat food, everything, when the bacteria are all in the colon. In the colon, when whatever waste materials, these bacteria, they produce ammonia. And ammonia is a real toxic stuff. And the function of the liver is of a sewage plant, because it has detoxified the ammonia. So many people, when they get severe acute viral hepatitis, the function that is affected most is your ammonia. So all the ammonia is coming in. Where does it go? Into the brain. So what happens? Comatose. These patients become comatose. So whether you have acute liver failure, whether you have chronic liver failure, when the ammonia goes into your head, and that is the function of the liver, to detoxify the ammonia and convert it into urea, and then it goes into cold taste department in the urine. Waste recycling. That is the concept. You look at it, the liver says, how did God make liver out of that? Waste recycling. So, हम सबकी वो रगों में खून दौड़ रहा है. वो जो the red cells, which everybody knows, like a bulb or anything or a tube light, it has a lifespan. Those red cells have a lifespan. 120 days, plus minus 10, they will die. And then it's like Delhi government said, 10-year-old cars, you can't be on the road. They have to be sent. So where does the body send them? Sends them to the spleen. And there they are broken down like cars. And what is the waste product? That is bilirubin. That bilirubin is taken up by the liver. And what does it do? Make it into bile. And that bile is used for digestion. I mean, can there be a better example of recycling? Certainly not. I can't think of anyone. Something which is a total waste product, dying red cells, dead bodies, you make something from that which helps in digestion of your food. So can there, the liver is a warehouse. But is the warehouse, it's like a bank locker. It's small, most lockers are small. You can't be putting gold bricks into them. Small, maybe a little, money, cash, pearls, jewelry, etc., etc. So it is where the body stores of vitamin B12 are there. So if for some reason all my B12 is removed, then the liver has got enough stores that 2 years that stock is there. You don't give me B12, I'll still have B12 because it's stocked over there. 2 saal ka wahan pe is enough. Vitamin D, another one. But it's not a storehouse for fat. The problem is, this is what is happening today. We're storing fat in the liver, and that's when things go wrong. So what are the symptoms? Exactly what I've told you. I'm going to show you slides. So what happens if you don't have clotting factors? The liver factory starts malfunctioning, production of clotting factors not there. One of the prime symptoms is that you'll get ecchymotic patches. Blue patches, we call them ecchymotic patches, fancy name. Yellow eyes. Why? Because the bilirubin that was being destroyed from the cells, produced from the red cells, is not being converted into bile. So that yellow thing, that yellow pigment that you see is all bilirubin. It's all, we just measure the blood tests, and we heard that. And what happens if you don't make enough albumin? Then all the fluid leaks out, and you get a belly like that. That's ascites. So then what happens now? I'm going to now go into this theme of storing fat in the liver. And this is what it is. Today we are in the era of fatty liver disease. I think I just saw the news a couple of hours. 1 in 4 in Mumbai has fatty liver disease. I mean, that's scary. That really is scary. So you have a healthy liver right in that corner over there, and then you put fat into it, and it becomes a fatty liver. And the next stage is fibrosis. Then it starts laying down things that cannot be reversed. And finally, the end stage is cirrhosis. And repetition. But why is there? There is a need to repeat. This is the sequence that it goes. It has to start from fatty liver, and it goes to NASH. NASH stands for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So people who are obese, people who are diabetic, and they're storing fat in the liver, they use the liver as a warehouse, then you get NASH. But somewhere down the lecture, I'll turn it into a Hindi word and say NASH. So NASH se NASH ho gaya. So it will come. So fatty liver, NASH, and then cirrhosis. Now there are 2 red arrows there. See, if you see those red arrows, NASH say it can come down to fatty liver. From fatty liver it can become normal. So that is reversible. So you can move in this direction. But what is, in the tickets there's the PNR. For PNR, for us is point of no return, not the ticket number, not the PNR number. So point of no return is cirrhosis. Once you have cirrhosis, then it's a point of no return, then it's a one-way ticket, and which sometimes ends at liver transplantation. So this is the silent epidemic, and this is actually because lifestyles have changed. See, human beings started off as being hunters, lived in a cave, hunt the animals, and at best they got a meal, maybe 2 meals, and then we progress. Now we have 3 meals, and we're not burning calories. So we're just eating more and not burning calories. So all that we eat, especially the fast food, the carbs that we eat, they are converted into lipid, and that lipid is stored in the liver. So the liver says, look, I'll give you 5% of my factory, you can use that as a storehouse, but beyond that it's going to damage me. So by definition, if more than 5% of the liver gets stored with fat, we call it fatty liver, and that's the first stage. So what are the risk factors for fatty liver? I'm sure you would want to know. Obesity. So I have a lady who walks in, and she has a son who's in class 8, and he's close to 80 kg. And I look at him, and obviously he has got some problems. So I said, apart from what you've come with, what don't you think he's a little on the heavier side? So she said, no, it's not like that. In our family, obesity runs in the family. So I said, no, excuse me, ma'am, let's change it. There is obesity because nobody runs in your family. So obesity is the single most important, if I had to single out. And then people who have diabetes mellitus. So once you have diabetes mellitus, the lipids start accumulating, and that ultimately leads to fatty liver. And hyperlipidemia basically means increased cholesterol, increased triglycerides in the blood. And to give you the magnitude, so 25% of the world population is supposed to have fatty liver disease. That's 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. That's the magnitude that we've reached. In the US, there was a recent paper which said about when they calculated, of course these are all mathematical models, and they said 800 to 500 to 100 million. In India, it's about 50 crores of people have fatty liver disease. And what we've seen is that, I don't think we should say we have seen. It's actually when we start doing the studies, you find out what is the prevalence. And that's what it says, that as you go every year, from 1988, it was 5%, now it's 99, it's 10%, then goes on. So this is definitely on the increase, because in school, we all went to school, and we had that compulsory games period. and I see what the situation is. People are more happy, children are more happy with their mobile phones and their video games. They're not into physical activity, and what a pity. So how do you diagnose NASH? That is the question that you want to know, because that was the middle. That is the point. You don't want to go to the point of no return. So simple blood tests. And all you need to do is an LFT and a lipid profile. You measure your blood sugar and add to that an A1C. So 4 tests will tell you precisely whether you have NASH. And if you want to find out your liver's got excess fat, all you need is an ultrasound. So it's very simple. Each and every street probably would have a lab which will tell you, which will be doing these tests. So who is the typical patient with NASH? So probably I think this is our age group, in the 40s to 50s, obese, sedentary lifestyle, diabetes, hypertension, and the dietary habits of having takeaway dinners or takeaway lunches. That is what is, so that is the typical patient you'll get with NASH and fatty liver disease. I've been stressing that liver is not a fat storage organ. So when we have a patient who has a fatty liver disease, perhaps the most, even more common or as common is alcohol. So alcohol causes exactly the same spectrum. It goes into fatty liver, it goes into NASH or NASH, and after that it is cirrhosis. So first thing that you have to find out, is the patient taking alcohol? And I'm sure there'll be many questions. So you have to exclude alcohol. And
we'll
then
keep it for the questions.
And of course, there'll be other causes of liver disease must be included, like hepatitis B, hepatitis C, etc. We won't talk about that. So what are the chronic diseases of the liver? So I put it my way: NASH, Vinash, or Satyanash. NASH I've talked about. Vinash is V. So V ke liye viral. Viral hepatitis and viral, whether it is B or C, they can damage your liver completely. And Vinash ho gaya. And I call this Satyanash because this is self-inflicted wound. You know, hepatitis B, you go to the barber and he does a bad job. He cuts you with a blade that he's used on the earlier patient, and you get hepatitis B. It's really not your fault. But that happens. Some patient has a trauma, he has multiple fractures, he needs blood, he gets blood from a donor who's got hepatitis B, and the doctor is only concerned that uska hemoglobin aa jaye, so he can operate, he can be taken up, his bones can be fixed. But 10 years later or 20 years later, he gets hepatitis B. And same thing happened to Amitabh Bachchan. So we know how he got hepatitis B. But alcohol, I mean, you are the one who's imbibing the alcohol. So therefore, it is Satyanash. There was a movie called Saving Private Ryan. I think what is more, I try and tell my patients, you better save your liver before it's too late. So what can we do? I'll be talking about safe drinking limits, so maybe this question will come up later. What is a total no-no is binge drinking. Binge drinking means in 3 hours you've knocked in 6 drinks. That's binge drinking. The liver can't take that much trauma. So maybe, you know, a couple of weeks, couple of months, but these people are the ones who really damage their liver. No physical exercise, or conversely, I mean, it is physical exercise. People who are active, they are the ones whose liver is going to be safe. Immunization. And lastly, drugs. I mean, drugs not only, don't take unnecessary medications of any. I'm not talking about recreational drugs. I'm talking about common antibiotics, painkillers. Many of these drugs can damage the liver. So be careful, be in touch with your physician, and don't take drugs on your own. So part 2 of protecting your liver is ABC. So 3 main viruses. Hepatitis A and hepatitis E is very common in India. We don't have a vaccine for hepatitis E, but it doesn't cause chronic liver disease. But yes, hepatitis A, especially in alcoholics, if they get hepatitis A, then it's a real bad prognosis. Hepatitis B, I'm sure, I hope all of you are vaccinated. There is no age for this hepatitis B vaccine. So if any of you sitting in this hall, you're not vaccinated, please go back. It's never too late. For C, we don't have a vaccine as yet.
So we are running slightly out of time.
Finished. Yeah. And lastly, as I said, diet, exercise, and say no to drugs. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Okay, the next
Which year you passed, sir?
speaker is Dr. Sanjay Kolte. Sir, without wasting time, please scare the hell out of everybody. And then I'll come on stage after that. Come. You've got your presentations. We've got the laboratory people, we've had the liver, now it's the time for the kidneys. I just hope you all attend the party tonight. The way we are scaring you. But I just hope everybody has short-term memory loss after this.
Good evening. I'm thankful to Sobha Delhi. I'll not waste time in this pleasantries here. It's a pleasure to be here and a panel full of erudite doctors, starting from an entrepreneur like Dr. Shah, a scholarly physician like Dr. Amarendra Singh Puri, my immediate next class, Dr. Manish Baijal, and probably a liver transplant surgeon also.
No, not liver transplant.
Not yet. And the moderator of the session, another Madhavian and a school captain. Proud to be associated with these eminent speakers here. Well, I have a story that actually differs in the sense that there is no leadership and there is nothing to actually inspire after an entrepreneur of the global level has spoken to you and a physician as scholarly as Dr. Puri has elaborated his fun-filled presentation.
Thanks.
I somehow, Dr. Shantanu said I was probably not, the school education was not good enough to make me continue in my 11th and 12th also. It's not like that. In fact, I feel the parent that Scindia School has been to me, I probably could not, I was a premature birth from that school, not having completed my 11th and 12th from there. But there's a story for this. My father wanted to make me a doctor, and he had his plans fixed. He wanted me to take admission to Nagpur Medical College, for which I needed a domicile of 2 years in Nagpur or Maharashtra. So 11th and 12th I was taken away to Nagpur. I became a doctor, so I'm a very reluctant doctor, although I did not want to become one, but I did not want to disobey my father also. I completed my MBBS, MS. After my MBBS, I actually again voiced my opinion to my father. I do not want to be a doctor anymore. Can I try my luck in UPSC? A couple of my friends were pursuing it, and I am sure I probably would have landed somewhere definitely. But he said, why do you want to go to the services? Services also, you'll become a collector or a secretary, whatever. They also have to obey somebody. A doctor is autonomous. अपनी मर्जी का मालिक होता है, वही रहो. That appealed to me actually. I said, fine. I went on, MS कर लिया. MS के बाद MCH की बारी आई. That is super specialization. उसका वाइवा था. उस वक्त I wanted to be something, in a branch with that involved challenges and dynamism. So I was hell-bent on becoming a cardiac surgeon. But then the contemporaries said, ये भी क्यों बनना है यार, इसमें कोई मजा नहीं है, दिन रात ओटी में पड़े रहोगे. Why not take up urology? मतलब urology में भी क्या है, बस वो पत्थर निकालो, ये सब, बाकी तो कुछ है नहीं. They said, इसमें kidney transplant है. I said, yeah, that also has lot of vascular surgery, तो ये ले लेते हैं. I took up urology और 91 से 94 में urology मैंने किया और हमारी जुडिशरी का उस वक्त कहर बरपा हमारे ऊपर. पूरे देश में इन्होंने किडनी ट्रांसप्लांट बंद करा दिया because there was lot of commerce involved in kidney transplant in those days. तो हमें किडनी ट्रांसप्लांट सीखने को ही नहीं मिला. So when I passed my MCH, I did not see the ABC of kidney transplant. करना तो था, बिना उसके तो हमारा कोई मज़ा था ही नहीं. So after that I spent another 2 years running around with my practice going on. collected my knowledge of kidney transplant in tits and bits. And circumstances that straight bracketed me into practice into Nagpur only. Probably you can call it the hinterland of the country. So did not have the privileges of all these people who have it by being located in a metropolis where you can probably influence a larger population. But well, there's a book that's been written on Dr. Sushil Shah which says, dare to make a change. I decided, why not? स्कूल से कुछ तो मिला है, यहाँ बने हैं तो यहाँ के लिए बने तो यहीं पे बढ़ेंगे. वहाँ एक चीज़ होती नहीं थी, किडनी ट्रांसप्लांट होता नहीं था, सीख लिया था. So I started my efforts in cultivating that kidney transplantation in Nagpur. And I'm proud to say that in 2001 we started kidney transplant when the entire country was probably still in the slumber and the fear of the organ transplant act that came around in 1994. So the fear was so much that nobody actually wanted to take it up again. But in 2001 we started in Nagpur, and that probably was an inspiration to again resurrect programs that were lying idle in other places in the country. After that, in Nagpur we have traveled a long way. In the last 22 years, we have also started transplantations in kidney, livers, and even heart lung transplantations have started happening in our region. और ये विनाश वाले जो लोग हैं, इनका एक उदाहरण मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि whenever there are organs available, we harvest the liver, we harvest the lungs, we harvest the heart, and in the end we harvest the kidneys. तो हमने एक kidney transplant, and whenever there are organs available, we have to call the patients on the wait list. तो उनको बुलाने के लिए एक बंदे को हमने फ़ोन किया, तो he was in a place around 60 kilometers away from Nagpur. उसे हमने फ़ोन किया, भाई किडनी अवेलेबल है, आपका नंबर आ गया, आओगे आप? डॉक्टर साहब मैं आ तो जाता हूँ, बिल्कुल कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, 2 घंटे में पहुँच जाऊँगा. मैंने बोला आ जाओ ना, फिर क्या दिक्कत है? नहीं, पिछले साल मेरा लिवर ट्रांसप्लांट हुआ था, तो चलेगा क्या? मैंने हाँ क्यों नहीं, अब सब ठीक है ना, क्रिएटिनिन अपना बिलिरुबिन वगैरह सब तुम्हारा नॉर्मल है? हाँ सब ठीक है, अच्छा है. बोला फिर क्या प्रॉब्लम है? नहीं, मैंने रात को बहुत थोड़ी सी पी रखी है. बोले तो विनाश का इनके ऊपर इतना ज़्यादा भूत हावी हो जाता है कि लिवर ट्रांसप्लांट के बाद भी ये लोग फिर विनाश की तरफ बढ़ जाते हैं. Anyways, on the lighter side of it, I actually did not know how to formulate my lecture, but because there was less time in communicating, and I have made some presentation on the lines of Dr. Puri, wherein I would like to tell you what a urologist is, because initially when I started practice, people would come to me and say, Doctor Sahab, urine test karane ke liye aaye hain. They probably thought I'm a pathologist who does only urine tests. So now kidneys, as we all know, they are the heart of urology. So basically a urologist not only removes urological ailments, he actually influences the welfare of your kidney. Because every illness that affects the urinary system, it ultimately weighs down on the kidneys. And kidney failure is one thing that you should not allow to exist in your body. And it is best prevented rather than cured. So my profile is basically surgical, and it deals in the treatment of all these problems that you all are aware of. In a nutshell, it deals with obstruction, overflow, or leakage of the urinary systems. And the aim of my therapy is to be as non-invasive and minimalistic as possible, and majorly with the use of endoscopes and energy devices. So the end point of every treatment that I do is to prevent kidney failure. An advice to all of you would be, do not take any symptom that can probably a pre-indicator of your problems inside, such as pain in the back, burning in urination, blood in urine, slowing down of the stream of urine, or swelling on the feet or around the eyes. Do not take it very lightly. Especially a word about slowing of stream. Usually this happens in the old age, and people take it as a part of aging, but it's not so. Invariably there is a cause such as benign enlargement of the prostate or carcinoma of the prostate which causes this problem, and that can be very easily treated if diagnosed in time. These are my hands and eyes. The endoscopes the laser machines, the monitors and the cameras that I use to achieve fragmentation and removal of stones, fulguration and removal of tumors, resection and enucleation of the prostate gland, opening up of all the obstructions that exist in these tracts, and removal of defunct organs. A word about a small clip on how the lasers work in our body. This is something we call as thulium laser, and this is what we use in treatment of the benign enlargement of prostate. You can see here how the laser achieves a bloodless cutting. And the other laser that we use is the holmium laser, which is usually used for fragmentation of the stones inside our urinary tract. Here you can see in the other video, a stone is being fragmented. If at all kidney failure is inevitable, you should know the symptoms that what it actually entails upon you. It causes increase in all the products that are unwanted in the body, such as the urea, creatinine, derangement of the acid levels, potassium levels, calcium levels, and they have a protean effect on the entire body. So all the systems of your body will be affected because of this. So it is best to preempt, and it's very easy to preempt kidney failure by investigating. If you are below 30 years of age and if there is a history of any congenital illnesses in the family, it's better to investigate. If you are above 40, then simple urine analysis, ultrasound, and a blood test that involves PSA levels. And after 60, you should do it every 6 months. Especially people with diabetes, hypertension, the incidence of kidney failure is very high. 1 in 3 adults with diabetes are liable to have CKD, and 1 in 5 of those with hypertension can have CKD. So as I said, the prevention is best done, and there are different mechanisms by which you can do. One of them is simple understanding of the gut microbiota. There are 10 times more number of bacteria in our gut than we actually have the number of cells in our body, and these bacteria play a very supportive role in prevention of various diseases. These bacteria lead to prevention of formation of unhealthy substances and formation of Well, just to cut the long story short, whenever a kidney failure is untreatable, we have to subject the patient either to any form of these treatments, that is hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, or ultimately changing of the organ, that is kidney transplantation. Hemodialysis, again, there are types wherein you can do it in the center or carry it at home. So is peritoneal dialysis. Dialysis centers, this is the country's map. There's a lot of, many states are found wanting on the facilities. Kidney transplant, again the source, many patients who come to me for getting a kidney transplantation, they come with a hope of getting a kidney. So the basic is that the shortage of organs is very high, and people think the doctor will arrange for a kidney, but the law doesn't allow us to do that. The kidneys are always to be given by either a blood relative or the donors from within the family. Now the world is trying to actually come across some solution wherein a transplant can be avoided, and this is probably a machine that probably will come in a few years, wherein it's an implantable device. You can avoid immunosuppression, and it works like a kidney 24 hours. It's just the size of a smartphone, and it is implanted inside the body and can take care of a normal kidney. It's still under research, and probably in another 2 or 3 years they should get its approval after various trials are done. Thank you very much.
Then they have no time.
I was using 5 minutes.
Okay, the next in line is Dr. Seema Puri, and she needs no introduction. She's a nutritionist of national renown. And she's a professor at the Delhi University at the Institute of Home Economics. Yeah, I'm yet to understand the exact meaning of this. Yeah, because
Thank you, Shantanu, and thank you, Sobha, for inviting me. I have already been told we are short of time, and luckily or unluckily, I don't have a Scindia background, so I don't have any nostalgia to relate to. So we'll save time. But
you want to put up your slide?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Where does that come? So I'm going to take on from where Dr. Amrinder Puri left off, where he talked about all the things in the environment which harm our liver, and also now we know the kidneys. So I'm going to talk about a healthy food environment, and I think that touches each one of us. Yeah. So what is a healthy food environment and how can we create it? So what I'd like to just bring to your notice is that we have this whole story about India shining, and we are but a society in transition. We have very high economic growth, but we also have very high levels of undernutrition, comparable to sub-Saharan Africa. We have very high levels of anemia, but we are also having increasing levels of obesity, of NAFLD, as Sir said, diabetes, hypertension, and the works. And quite literally, as they say, the Indian population is paradoxically stuffed and starved at the same time. And this is just to give you an overview. Under 5 children, the higher lines in the line diagrams are stunting and wasting. And the map of India shows the prevalence of anemia among children. So we are still not got over these problems of undernutrition. And we have this problem of overweight and obesity. 44% Indians are overweight and obese. 1 in 4 urban Indians suffer from diabetes, 1 in 3 suffer from hypertension, and you heard about NAFLD also, very high prevalence. In fact, a recent study of ours in Delhi, still to be published, shows a prevalence of over 50% in the community when judged by a fibroscan, which is a more advanced technique. So we really need to worry about our lifestyles. And basically, it's the changing food environment and the lifestyle. And when we look at our food environment, what is it? Physical and economic access to food, easy accessibility, easy availability. With all these apps, even an 8 or 10-year-old child can order food at home. Food promotion, advertising, and information. We are bombarded with all types of information, and of course, food quality and safety. Very, very important aspects. How many of us read labels? Very few. So we are living in an obesogenic food environment. You know, and what does this obesogenic food environment mean? I love this definition, a world where it's hard to move but easy to eat. Very easy to eat. You have all these apps. You have food at every corner. But when you go to the park, they have a beautiful fountain and they'll say, yahan pe bachcho ko cricket khelna mana hai. You know, you have traffic, you have computer games, video games, all these things which is making it very hard for us to move, but very easy to eat. And as I love this quote also, which a study showed that use of remote controls and mobile phones reduces 25 hours of walking per person per year. And then what about our diets? We are shifting to more energy dense foods, as we call HFSS, high fat, sugar, salt foods, very highly processed. And you know, about 25% of our diet consists of oils and fats, and all the chips and chocolates, biscuits, sweets and juices. These are Government of India national figures. We have decreased our consumption of fruits and vegetables, pulses, milk and milk products compared to much earlier. And all these processed foods are rich in trans fats, which directly get deposited in your arteries and cause chronic cardiovascular diseases. And you know, an average Indian consumes 119% more salt per day than what WHO recommends. So that's very, very high. And yet, they're easily available, they're all over, and we are the top market. You talk to any fast food company and they say, oh, you know, India is a big possible market. It's the place to go to because it's the biggest market for, apparently, for all these foods. And then we have the promotions of unhealthy foods. Social media is bombarded. And I would also like to warn you here, we have a lot of self-proclaimed nutritionists who don't know, they're not qualified, but yet they have lost weight or they did some fat diet and they think they're an expert on it. Also, we should be very careful, as during the media session they mentioned, many of these articles in newspapers are sponsored. So if somebody is recommending, a dietitian is recommending you to eat almonds, most probably she's being paid for it. So please be very careful and please look at knowledge or information very critically. And then of course we have the children who are bombarded with entertainment, buy one get one free, a free gift, a toy or inside a chocolate, and in-school marketing. And our portion sizes, very important. Besides the access, of course we have spending capability, pricing, but the portion sizes have increased. Look at the tub of popcorn. I think when you were all in India, you had a small packet of popcorn in the cinema hall. Today children are consuming huge tubs. And then of course poor nutrition labeling, very, very important. So what has the government done about it? Many of you might have seen this campaign on TV, Aaj se thoda kam, which featured Rajkumar Rao and said, Aaj se thoda kam khaiye, chini, namak, tel, and it was quite a success. So government is doing things. They have taken out a regulation which bans the sale of HFSS foods within 50 meters of a school. But sad to say, I live in Hoskas, and just under the school, Lakshman Public School is a school which has a metro station underneath, and it has all fast food joints which the Delhi government has opened. So the regulation is also thwarted for whatever reasons, commercial interests. Nutrition labeling is very important. Government is working very strictly on it, and we hope to come up with a new rating system very soon. You may have not noticed, but there is higher taxation for unhealthy foods. The aerated beverages have the highest level of GST, 28%. It may not be have noticed by many of you. And even in restaurants now, there has to be appropriate menu labeling. So you'll find in restaurants also, many of them have adopted this, where they mention the calories and the benefit. And then of course, the food industry is being pushed to reformulate their products. So the government is doing a lot, but we also need to increase the consciousness. Example of a label, nutrition information. Very few people read this. I'm sure most people only read the expiry date. You know, look at the logos. There should be an FSSAI logo or an ISI or an AgMark logo. The health star rating, the green one on the top, is something what the Indian one is going to be based on. It's called the India star rating. The more stars, the healthier is the food. Fortified, we have started now mandatory fortification of 5 foods. Government of India has recommended milk, wheat, rice, oil, and salt. And they're fortified with iron, vitamin D, etc. And the Jaivik Bharat logo is for organic food. If you see the bottom right-hand side, where's all the sugar hiding? You'll have a dietetic biscuit or a zero sugar biscuit, but all these, the words in bold are different forms of sugar. So they don't say sugar, but they'll say grape sugar, or they'll say maple syrup, or they'll say fructose or dextran, but they're all means the same thing. So we need to be very conscious, very aware of reading labels when we are consuming foods. And then of course, lifestyle modification. It cannot only be diet. As Sir mentioned, so WHO recommends at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate activity a week, and at least twice a week some muscle strengthening activity. And very, very important is to limit your sitting time, sedentary time. Last slide. And then alcohol, as Sir said, preferably avoid. Maximum, otherwise 1 drink daily for women and 2 drinks for men. And they've also given the size of the drink. So it's not a guidance for tonight, but yes, in general. Complete abstinence of tobacco products and stress management. Definitely stress management. A very important thing they stressed is also that, you know, when you're working in your active life, many people don't develop any hobbies. And then this kind of impinges on their lifestyle later because there's no activity. So whether it's golf or anything like that, there should be some hobbies. And all these lifestyle modification strategies have to start young. So it's the elderly of tomorrow who have to start thinking today, and not when you really reach 60 years of age. And what about diet? These are the recommendations by the Indian Council of Medical Research. Eat a variety of foods. So I don't want to read through it, but variety, balance and moderation. If you remember these three words, that's the mantra of a healthy diet. Variety in everything, whether it's wheat, rice, millets, dals, different types of dals, vegetables, different colored vegetables. How many of us eat 5 different colored fruits and vegetables every day? Very nice. Very few hands, just 4 or 5 hands. And yes, yes. But otherwise, when I ask my students, the only vegetable they eat is potato.
And paneer.
Yeah, which is not really technically a visit. Yes, a rainbow diet. Rainbow has 7 colors. I would even say even 4 or 5 is more than enough. And then of course, combination of fats and oils, healthy traditional food, homemade food is the best. So you have to really change your environment. It's in your hand to promote healthy food choices. The choice is yours. The environment may not be able to be changed, but your choice will be dependent on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Shantanu takes over in the next 3.5 to 4 minutes. I will just take a little different call as to what you've already heard. We've heard a lot about prevention. So I have a question for the audience. How many of us actually knew the word pandemic 3 years back? Except for the doctors. Very few. Okay, so you've heard the word pandemic, COVID pandemic or coronavirus. You know of any other pandemic that we are actually going through?
Obesity.
Yes. So biggest pandemic that we are going through for the last few decades is obesity and type 2 diabetes. We as Indians are going to be the capital of type 2 diabetes in the world. What do you mean by type 2 diabetes? Diabetes that you develop during adulthood. 40% of the people who are obese or morbidly obese become diabetics. When you become a diabetic, you develop complications of diabetes, complications of obesity. You've heard Dr. Puri talk about NASH. That's a complication of obesity. You've heard Dr. Sanjay talk about kidney transplants. This is a long-standing complication of a patient who's poorly controlled diabetic. So how do you quantify obesity? We've talked about let's prevent obesity, let's prevent overweight. There is a very simple calculation, and I think what ma'am would talk about in a big way is to calculate your body mass index. You can sit on your chair, take out your phone, weight in kilograms divided by height in meters square. It gives you a figure which is called body mass index, BMI. What is a normal BMI? For Western population, it's 25, below 25. We as Southeast Asians or South Asians, it should be less than 23.5. Why it is 23.5, 2.5 less than the Western population or 1.5 less? We develop complications of obesity at lower weight. This is called the genetic disadvantage. So if you see a Western or a Caucasian guy who's 50 BMI, still not a diabetic. Out here you will see a patient or a person with a body mass index of 30, 31, a poorly diabetic, poorly controlled diabetic. So when you fall into these categories of so-called metabolic syndrome, that is obesity, diabetes, increased blood pressure, bad lipids, this is called metabolic syndrome. So once you are beyond a certain level of obesity, so there are levels of obesity. Type 1 obesity is between 25 and 30 for Western population, WHO classification. It's called type 1 obesity. Above, it's called overweight. Above 30 to 35, it's called type 1 obesity, which to an extent can be reversed. Above 35 is called morbid obesity. What do you mean by morbid obesity? Obesity when it becomes a disease. WHO today identifies obesity as a disease, and like all other diseases, it needs treatment. It cannot be left alone. This is not only a condition that you create. Yes, you play a big role. Poor lifestyles, it's a lifestyle disease, but we have a genetic disadvantage. You see patients who are thin, you go inside for a surgery, you see a huge liver, fatty liver. Patient is not fat. That's a genetic disadvantage. So patients who are morbidly obese, they fall into the category where they actually are candidates for something called bariatric surgery. That's when we come into the picture. So I'm a laparoscopic surgeon specializing in bariatric surgery. So bariatric surgery is right at the tip of the pyramid, right at the apex. You have to have good lifestyles, you can use medications, you can try every possible thing. If it doesn't work, still you are at that level of BMI 35 and beyond. That's when it's called bariatric surgery, is something which is needed. Another last point that I will make, bariatric surgery today is also called metabolic surgery. You read newspapers, you talk about metabolic surgery. So what is metabolic surgery? It's the same as bariatric surgery. Bariatric surgery with metabolic advantages. So it not only helps you reduce weight, 83% of the patients who are also diabetics, who are morbidly obese, undergoing surgery, discontinue their medication for diabetes in the next 6 months. So it is the advantage of weight loss, hormonal changes that takes place with the surgery, that you go into remission of diabetes. So even if you stay in remission for the next 10 years, you've been able to postpone the complications of diabetes for the next 10 years. That is the big advantage. So I stand here today just to let you know that there is something which is called bariatric surgery, and the advantage of bariatric surgery is something called metabolic surgery. So this is all I wanted to let you know about. This is the last possible treatment for patients who do not respond to medical means of management for their overweight, obesity or morbid obesity. So today this surgery is also offered to patients who are overweight with uncontrolled type 2 diabetes. So this is something, a discussion which can go on for hours, but of course we'll be around in the evening, so feel free, we can talk about it. And this is something you see it in your family, in surroundings. It is the commonest possible disease that we see today. So pandemic today, now that COVID is almost gone, even today obesity and type 2 diabetes are the biggest pandemics that the world is fighting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'm just going to take precisely how much time, Navodit? 5 minutes. Okay.
Max Saket.
Okay.
Ritika is our lady. You must be meeting her.
Professor Seema, there was, when I passed out from school, becoming a doctor from Scindia school was considered, next to, walking all the way to Antarctica. And leave alone the fact, Madhav House having so many doctors, because Madhav House had the sobriquet of being the best in games. They forever lifting up the Nepal shield, they could never get the efficiency, except for once possibly. That was reserved for Jayaji. So if any doctor ever came out, he's probably from Jayaji. So anyway, a little bit of banter. But okay, I am an ophthalmologist, and I am not a terrorist, but I am not going to scare you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about lovely things on how to enhance our lives and how to improve our lifestyle. How many people above 50 here? Great business for me. How many golfers? Not Bura sir? Okay. The gentleman in the left photo and in the right photo, the extreme left gentleman is Major Samir Sood. He's my boss. He is my senior from college. He's from Mayo College, and he had this high number. He's an excellent golfer. But lastly, in the last few years, he was having problems. He was losing out a lot of tournaments because he couldn't sight the ball. So just 2 years ago, he decided to go in for a presbyopic correction. He was a myopic with presbyopia setting. That's the worst combination. And this gentleman has started winning tournaments all over, and he couldn't thank himself. And okay, we work as a team. He couldn't stop thanking us. Okay, and okay, so I'm a rider. I'm a absolute, I'm a doctor by default, but I'm a rider by passion. So there are lots in my group, and riding is a passion which is picked up by people who are well into middle age. Thoda paisa kamaya, tab jaake ek super bike kharida. So, and most people, when we ride, keep riding about 700, 800 kilometers a day, and going to Goa, going to Cochin, and by the time late in the evening with all the, the vehicle lights, headlights flashing, most of the people realize that they are yet not young anymore. But when they were young, they didn't have the money to buy the bike. So, okay, so what I'm coming to the point is 75 years, kya? Amrit Mahotsav, Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. Okay, this is what I proclaim today for everybody above 50. Freedom from presbyopia. Because, ophthalmology in the last 23, 24 years, ever since I became an ophthalmologist, 23 years ago, it was restoring sight. Today, we talk about enhancing lifestyle and giving a new outlook to life. So, and this is, I'm not selling anything. This is exactly the cutting edge technology that's available in India. Dr. Reddy from Apollo Hospital says India provides cutting edge healthcare, absolutely advanced medical treatment, and it's not cheap. By cheap, what I mean is it's a derogatory word. It's not cheap. It's cheap in the financial sense of the word. So we provide cutting edge technology in India today at probably 1/4 the cost that is available in the West. And freedom from presbyopia is what I'm talking to the audience here. There's amazing technology which can kind of fix lots of problems. There's freedom from prescription glasses, as you know about LASIK. I'm a refractive surgeon. It changes the entire life of a person. Myopia control. Okay, I'm not too sure whether it's the constant looking into the mobiles or the laptops and the lack of physical activity outdoors, or is it the greater awareness amongst parents and school staff that has led to an increase in myopia amongst children. But then there is a lot of top-end opticals available today which can arrest myopia progression in children. Okay, having said all that, we, as talked about earlier, India today stands as the diabetic capital of the world. A few years ago, diabetic eye disease or diabetic retinopathy was the end of the road. But as of today, people can continue with treatment to lead very healthy lifestyle. So it's not the end of the road, and I hope I'm not scared anyone. I'm probably the only one who's kept saying enhance your lifestyle. Okay, thank you so much. And we will skip all this. We'll probably talk about it over a drink in the evening. Thank you so much. That's the hospital where I work in. Our business principle is low cost, high volumes. And we've gone into the tier 2 cities, which probably has very poor penetration because most of us concentrate in the metropolises. And that's our mantra. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope there aren't any questions. No time. Because the Shadi Barat is coming in. And Navot is. Okay.
No, there are few questions in the end there. They have.
Incidentally, Navodat is very fond of Bonium. That's how I got to know. That'll be over a drink. I've got a mic which is wilting, so it's telling us to go.
Shantanu, there are questions in the end.
Okay, okay. Okay, serious questions. Only one question. Yeah, only one question.
Ma'am, can you please throw some light on different types of fats, like trans fats, saturated fats, and other kinds of fats?
Kind of fats. Saturated,
kind of fats.
polyunsaturated.
Because I'm sorry for being ignorant.
No, well, we have different types of fats and oils. If you're talking about cooking medium, then you're talking about the ghee. Suppose something like ghee has more saturated fat. And if you talk of vegetable oils, they are polyunsaturated fats. Now the point is that there are also, when you heat these at very high temperature or when they become hydrogenated, these vegetable oils get converted to trans fats.
How does this affect us?
Yeah, so I'm coming to that. So basically what happens is trans fats are very harmful. Like I told you, they get deposited in the arteries as plaques, and therefore we should not eat them. So your low-cost bakery items, you know, all your halwais who fry food and they repeatedly heat the oil, they would contain large amounts of trans fats. So we should avoid those. When it comes to oils, oils contain essential fatty acids in different proportions. You have omega-3, omega-6, you have to have a correct balance. To cut it short, a long story short, what I'm going to just say is, please consume a mixture of oils. So you know, have like traditionally, we did use some ghee for say rotis or putting dal with tadka. We use mustard oil for certain vegetables. We used other cooking oil for different vegetables, butter for something else. So using a combination of fats and oils is the ideal. And nowadays in the market, you're also getting blends, ready-made. You know, companies are coming out with blended oils. And or the other thing is to rotate. You change your oil every time you buy a new tin. So that's the short story.
Thank you. Just want to thank the panelists. There's so much we want to learn, but just as Dr. Mukherjee said, maybe over dinner and drinks. Yeah, I just request some ladies in the guests, in the audience to come and present a token of appreciation to all the panelists.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
After this, the guests can move to Jacaranda Hall where there is tea and snacks.